Hello? Hello? Anyone around here speak basketball?
This is Adam Silver.
Vision 6'9". What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks
Basketball Podcast.
I'm your host, Freddie Rivas, who will only be saying Vision 6'9" a couple more times. So I'm digging it.
Yikes! Really?
I have a new slogan.
Coming for season 11?
Yeah, I think so. I think I got one.
Wow.
But who are you on the other side? Introduce yourself to the people.
Freddie, I'm your producer. My name's Matt Duncan. And, funny that you say that. We're going to have some change coming for season 11. And I think that I'm ready to retire some of the Weird Al. I think this might be our last. Maybe.
And never say never, right?
I think maybe we're going to start season 11 in 2 weeks and then go back to weekly. So I'm going to maybe invest in some other stinks, maybe retire Weird Al a little bit. Maybe I'll bring him out mid-season when we need a little bit of a lift boost. Up boost. Yeah.
For anyone if it's your first time listening to this podcast, Matt's been playing Weird Al sound bites for probably about a year and a half now. And it's a big part of this pod. So honestly, settle in. Let's Raptors had media day. It was media day everywhere. But we're going to start with Raptors. So let's bring on our guests here. Okay, Chelsea, let's start with you. And I should say to our listeners, I feel like we have the luxury and the privilege. You were both there, right? So I'm like a lot of people, just sort of going off what I watched, and kind of like Twitter vibes, which is always a chaotic and stressful thing to do. Don't trust Twitter angst for your actual news, but it happens. So I guess let me just start with the idea that anyone that's used to the Messiah era, I think, is used to confidence, this idea that things are okay, we are patient, we are not a panic driven front office. And we're probably going to hear things like, I believe in Toronto, I believe in the city. Probably going to hear the word win a bunch. And we have won. So it all kind of made sense. We heard the word selfish at least a couple times from him, from Darko, later from Pascal. So my question, which is a little bit meandering, is that what message is being sent, would you say, Chelsea? Like, what, beyond all the kind of like semantical, selfishness or whatever, what is the front office and the rest of the team, like, what are they trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, being there yesterday, getting to like hear all of them and like, I guess just like sense the mood. I think, there was a lot said yesterday online about like the vibe of media day. And like, I don't think it was as bad as people were talking about, but like there was still, and in my opinion, I think the message being sent was like a lack of a message. I think the problem going on right now is that there's like kind of a lack of direction and a lack of really knowing what's going on. And I think the big thing that I noticed from Masai's press conference was that one of the things he said is that they just wanted to like wait and see what happens this season. And so in my head, that was kind of like, okay, they're kind of prolonging sending an actual message. Like anything we hear right now, I don't think is the real message. I think they are procrastinating in my view. So I think that, I didn't really get a clear message. And I think that was intentional. I think a lot of what they said was vague. And especially when it came to like the future and what their plans were in terms of people's contracts expiring and who they're planning on like, giving extensions to and all of that. I get, some of it being business stuff and you don't want to talk about it, but in my head it was just very much like vague and like we don't want to like stir the pot one way or another.
Mm-hmm. So let me just sort of jump on like the business stuff part of what you're saying. Do you think like the vagueness is to remain malleable? Like is sort of the strategy there? Like, you're saying it was intentional, and I think it was, right? You're hearing Masai and Darko sort of say similar things, right? So they're on the same page, even if it's to not say too much. Like, is it,
Yeah.
them being like, we don't want to, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is it them being like, we don't want to say anything because what if in a couple days we get OG to sign? Or what if in a couple days we get Pascal to sign, or, have a trade or something like that? You know what I mean? Is that part of the philosophy, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this team has always been, or this front office specifically, has been a little bit tight-lipped with like what their plans are, especially when it comes to like trade deadline or draft stuff, and in that sense. And so I do think the vagueness is intentional to kind of, I guess, keep their cards close to their chest and see if there is anything happening right now, not to, leak anything or to get people thinking one way or another. And I do also think it's a little bit in the wake of losing out on the Dame thing, whether that was like real or not. And I think it was real, but to lose out on something like that, where that would have been such like a team altering trade, and maybe they were planning for that and it didn't work out. And so now it's kind of like, okay, now we're scrambling to figure out what our plan is. And so now we just don't have a plan for a little bit. And so I think it's a mix of what you're saying and also just kind of the like dust settling from not much of their summer plans working out, obviously, because Fred didn't sign and, then all the trade stuff didn't happen. So I think they've kind of made a few attempts this offseason and nothing's really come to fruition. And so now they're kind of playing the like, let's wait and see. And when the right trade comes along, we'll take it. That was another one of his like buzz sentences yesterday, was like, when the right thing comes along, it'll be right or whatever. So yeah, I think it's just like a mix of a couple things.
Yeah. If you look at this open sky for long enough, you will maybe see a shooting star, but maybe you won't. Science. But yeah, like I know there does seem to be, I mean, I feel like Masai has always been opportunistic because sort of like an overall strategy. And I guess if you're missing out on those opportunities, it doesn't mean you're not trying to get them done. It just means that like, it's kind of, Vivek, let me go to you. Same thing. What are you like, if you had to walk away, if you're walking away from media day being like, what is the message? Like, what would you say that is?
The message again is just that there is uncertainty over this team. I think along the lines of what Chelsea's saying, if you just look at that presser in a vacuum, it's not that bad. But I think it's when you sum it all up with everything that's transpired the last couple of years, and especially entering this offseason where you were thinking, okay, in terms of maybe questions you've asked the last couple of years about, hey, what does Vision 6-9 look like? What is Pascal Siakam like as a number one option? This debate that we're now having over to go younger or, to really build around Pascal, nothing is really being answered, right? Like, you're halfway in, you're halfway out. And then you look at some of the answers that were given. Like, I think back to the season before when Masai was asked a question about Pascal, and he was on the verge of tears with how proud he was of how Pascal had rebounded from Tampa and had this incredible season. And now he gets asked a question about Pascal, and he's just like, yeah, we'll wait and see. And, he's talking about selfishness. And so, what is this crazy shift that's happened?
Yeah, right.
And so that was one thing that I came away thinking. Then the other thing that I totally understand fans being frustrated about is Masai said at the trade deadline that, big decisions are for the off season, not the trade deadline. And he was explaining at the time why nothing worked out in terms of trading Fred or what
Right.
other move you might have in mind. And so you come into this offseason with that expectation of, okay, this is where like big assessments are going to be made, because he's made it clear that, it's not for the trade deadline. And now if nothing happens in these next couple weeks, you're basically saying that nothing's going to happen again until next offseason. Unless you go back on your word and all of a sudden, things have opened up at the trade deadline. So there's so many things. This is the first time I think that the Raptors fan base as a whole is not really buying what Masai is selling.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I feel like, sorry if I jumped on you there.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been, a vision or this idea of like, well, I know things that you don't, so, just watch. And I mean,
just quickly,
yeah,
like even to the point, where Masai is saying, oh, when the right opportunity or the right player comes along, we will take it. He almost makes it sound as if like they've kind of been in control of these situations, and it's almost like they didn't view Dame as the right player.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this absolutely would have been the right move if the other side would have accepted. So you know what I mean? So who the right player is, all of that, I think just comes down to both sides just coming to an agreement, right? I don't think it's so much, oh, we actually didn't want this guy. So
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's just a lot of holes that can be poked into Masai's messaging from, the trade deadline to now, that is creating just a lot of angst, understandably.
And, well, even yesterday when we were talking, well, not we, because he was talking and I was sitting, but when he was talking yesterday about the trade stuff, like you were just saying, and he kept saying a few times, it takes two people to do a deal. It takes two people to do a deal. So obviously what was happening is that they were trying to get Dame, and Portland just wasn't accepting what they had to offer. Either they weren't offering enough, or it wasn't the right stuff, or Dame just didn't want to come, or whatever that stuff was. But that was another thing that yesterday I was like, he keeps saying that it takes two people. And even with all these reports coming out saying like he's difficult to make deals with and this and that, like that adds to this, like you were saying, like not distrust, I don't know if that's the right word, but this like disengagement with his message that is very new. Because I would say even at the trade deadline, people were still like, trust him.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I don't know if this is projecting a little bit, but I feel like with Masai, with the way he's operated, I've always said that he doesn't like to operate without leverage. And I feel like he's been in this position for a while where he doesn't have leverage. So it's sort of like, it's almost like there's this feeling of being stuck. And, with Vision 6-9, it was sort of like, hey, don't worry, like I'll figure this out. And then we trade for Pirtle, which is kind of an admission that it's like, okay, we do need someone to shore up the middle. And then, when it comes to Fred, that's like a James Harden miscalculation, whatever, he got the bag, so that's like an L. And then, trying to get in on this like Lillard, I guess, if it takes two people to trade, that was like a 3-team deal, right? So we couldn't be a third team. We couldn't be a second team, whatever it was. Yeah, I think we all see these kind of like missed opportunities, and it's almost, back to what Vivek was saying. It's kind of like him saying, no, don't worry. Like we're actually, we're not gonna be desperate here, and we're going to just like, we're in control. And it's kind of hard to believe when it seems like you ask someone to go out, for some drinks, and they're like, oh, I'm busy. And you're like, I never wanted to go out. So, I'm just chilling, actually.
You think about what Vivek was saying before, how he says he doesn't like to manage stuff at the trade deadline, but you think about how he's put himself into a corner now where you either have to do something at the trade deadline this year, or you risk the same thing happening 2 years in a row where your free agents just walk. And like, that's a very large possibility given like what is transpiring right now with this team. And so either he's going to go back on his word from a year ago and say, you know, okay, I guess I'm trading in the trade deadline, or there's like a really good chance that Pascal or Gary or OG are just going to walk, if not more than one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you've put yourself in this corner now where either you're going to go back on your word or you're going to lose out.
Yeah.
I think one of the things he needed to do that he didn't fully do was just really own the Fred VanVleet situation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like even when he like he literally said, if you want to call it a failure, then we'll take responsibility for it. It's not, hey, we look back on the situation and we messed up. It's, oh, if you feel that way, then fine, you know?
Yeah.
And I think when you look at that situation, like go back, like why are you trading for Jakob Poeltl? Obviously, you're trying to be very competitive right now. Why do you give up, you know, top 6 protection on a pick, right? Because you are expecting to be very good. And now by losing Fred VanVleet, you put yourself in a tough situation. And I've been pretty critical of the Jakob Poeltl deal. Because I think you've lost that on 2 levels. Obviously, there's the aspect of the pick. There's the aspect of, hey, Vision 6-9 failed. You have to get a center in. But to me, the other aspect in which you failed is you've got the wrong center. Like, part of why I was okay with being patient in getting a center, it was if you got the right center to play alongside the rest of the roster.
Right.
And
Like a
when
Miles
you
Turner
look,
or whatever.
it has to be a big that can space the floor. As long as Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes are on the same team, you need a big that can space the floor. And if not, you're just going to run into these issues where spacing is a massive issue. Like Jakob Poeltl literally could not play at the end of a play-in game. The only reason he got on the floor at the very end was because Gary Trent Jr. was so bad in that game.
Yeah.
So the fact that you've traded for this center who you call a top 10 center that can't even play closing minutes of a play-in game, like, I like Jakob Poeltl individually as a player. I think he would be absolutely phenomenal with the Warriors, with, you know, the Phoenix Suns, with plenty of shooting around him.
Mm-hmm.
But in this situation, he's an average center at best with this roster.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair, and it's like, it's sort of a harsh. Like when you were saying that, I felt my throat go like, because it's like, shit, man. When you lay it out like that, it's pretty rough. And yeah, I love Jakob Poeltl. I think he's really, you know, an intelligent basketball player. He's a good. He's well rounded, minus the fact that, you know, shooting is such a massive part of any team's success in this current era of the NBA. And then you also have this sort of,
and he can't make free throws.
And you can't make free throws. And you sort of have this failure alongside all of those, which is, we will teach people how to shoot. That's like, well, you better teach them faster, because you know what I mean? Like, short of Precious, Scotty, Pascal, all making sort of 3-point jumps this year, you just have too many players on one team that can't space the floor or shoot. And it doesn't matter how creative you are with offensive rebounding. And, you know, I do have some belief that, you know, Darko will bring in some new ideas. And, you know, to a point that was being made, I think it was by you, Vivek, earlier, about sort of like, we don't make, you know, or maybe you both made it, but like the changes in the summer thing. I do think letting go of Nurse is a gigantic change to the overall everything of this team. Mm-hmm. But
that's fair.
Until we sort of see the guy who was brought in is better and able to establish a development system or reestablish a development system, or sort of like put us on a new trajectory, it doesn't feel like anything. Like, people, when people think about big changes, they think about players. They don't think about coaches and coaching staff. And that's fair, and then and also you set yourself up for, hey, we have 3 people, we're bringing them all back. It's like, okay, well, you're lucky Gary opted in. You did sign Pirtle to 20 a year, which is like fair enough, but then you missed out on Fred. And yeah, there's a lack of ownership of that. And I'm glad you highlighted if, because the if is sort of like, man, just say it. We miscalculated the Fred scenario. Because he's always going on about his job being secure. So it's like, well, your bosses probably know that too. So, we know it, they know it. If you just say, hey, we messed up on Fred and we didn't anticipate what happened, and it did, and we got Schroeder. But yeah, I mean, there's so much I don't know about messaging. Maybe he can't say that for Schroeder's sake, or I'm giving him excuses now, but okay. Let's keep talking about media day, but let's just kind of let that bleed in. Like, I think I think we dealt with the sort of like, the Pascal, this idea of message and stuff. What else sort of, it can be small, it can be big. Like, what do you think is something you observed in media day that is, forget about Twitter for a second, is sort of not resonating with the fan base enough, but is the thing?
I think for me, the prioritization of internal development, like when you look at the coaching staff that Darko Rajakovic has brought in, when you look at Rajakovic talking about, hey, I want my bench to be 4 or 5 guys deep, and they have to have an opportunity to play. I think that's something significant to look forward to this season.
For sure.
And, for me, the last couple of years, something that has traditionally been a major strength in the Masai era, it was that pipeline from the 905 to the Raptors and the development of rotation pieces, right? And so I feel like neither has really transpired. Like, you look at guys who have been drafted, like Malachi Flynn, you look at, Delano Benton hasn't really panned out. We're kind of in wait and see mode with Christian Koloko, who I like. And so, obviously wish him the best. Really tough time physically right now for him.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, for sure. So there's, a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about what's happened with the development the last few years. And so I think that is something that, with Darko saying how important that is to him, I want to see things really get back in gear. Because, trades, free agents, all of that stuff, you can only do so much, and then it's kind of out of your control. This is very much in your control in terms of internal development, in terms of your scouting, all of that. So I think that's the part of the Raptors that they have lost a bit of that identity that they really need to rediscover.
Yeah, well said, and well observed too. I think I've said it a bunch of times on this pod, but one of the big kind of egg on my face moments about last year is, I'm going to say it again because it sounds ridiculous. I said that last year's Raptors team was going to be a regular season juggernaut and a first round exit. So that was what I thought last year's team was. But a big part of that was what I didn't factor into Nurse's philosophy was this sort of like heavy minutes thing. Like, I so thought that Vision 6-9, like a major key integral part of it, is this like kind of platoon basketball where we rolled out 10, 11, 12 guys and we played this insane defense and offensive rebounding and all this kind of stuff. I thought that was a major part of it. And yeah, I've always admired guys like, Steve Kerr, and the way that they do that, because I feel like, like, you can practice as much as you want, and obviously that does matter, but I really do feel like in-game rep, like meaningful minutes too, like not just garbage time, and also not looking over your shoulder. Like, if you get 5 minutes a game every night, I think that, that's different than getting, 25 minutes one night and then you don't play for a month. Like, I really think you're like, hey, you have 5 minutes, do something. Here's what we expect. But yeah, I really, I'm with you on that. Chelsea, is there anything, that you kind of observed and, think is relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was like at the borderline of a lot of these discussions we were having yesterday. Well, like people on Twitter were having yesterday, where the thought about the coaching system was kind of being talked about, and I think the one thing that is kind of getting left behind a little bit is that we're about to see a huge shift in the way that this team is coached, and I feel like that's going to bring out so much difference in the way that these players are used and like how they play in general. I mean, the big thing, especially when Darko was up there yesterday, was him talking about his like love for like classic traditional basketball. And I think the thing that Vision 6-9 didn't really lend well to was those traditional things like, using the pick and roll and ball movement and stuff like that the Raptors really lacked last season. And I think the main messaging that Darko and even Masai and whoever were trying to get out was the fact that they're going to try and go back to all of these like basics. And I think that that's something that we haven't seen on this team for a little while, maybe because of the whole Vision 6-9 thing. And I do think that as much as that's kind of become a joke over the past few years, I do believe we're like kind of closing it down on that era and kind of going back to basics. And we're going to see a lot more kind of traditional style. And I mean, that's kind of hard to say when we don't really have a clear vision on who the point guard is going to be. But I do kind of see where, a lot of the talk with Scotty yesterday was how he's going to be on ball more and how they want to develop him into more of like a point guard option. And so I think that's part of this whole going back to basics, traditional classic basketball kind of stuff. And I think, whether it ends up working or not, or whether these are the right players to do that, I'm not sure, but I do think that's like the plan. And I mean, if you have been a criticizer of Vision 6-9, especially over the past couple of years, then, maybe that's a good sign for you, but I'm very curious how it works out, because that's kind of been the like Darko theme since he's been brought in. So
Yeah, I mean, and for a guy that like wrote an essay on the pick and roll,
yeah,
it would be a pretty wild joke for him to not run pick and rolls. I mean, if he's like, I understand the pick and roll to its like, absolute granular degree. If he's not rocking pick and rolls when he's a head coach, then it's like, wait a second. I mean, in all fairness, I do remember the talk about Nick Nurse coming in was that he was an offensive genius. And, he really sort of like, I think, obsessed over defense more than anything else, as a Raptors head coach. So who knows?
Yeah. And I do think, like, one last thing, I do think that's where a lot of the selfish rhetoric came from yesterday. And I think it started because I guess a lot of the philosophy behind this whole Vision 6-9 thing kind of, I guess, lent well to like ISO ball and stuff like that, where they're not playing that traditional pick and roll basketball because you don't have a traditional center on the floor. And so I think a lot of that selfish talk yesterday came from the fact that they're like, okay, we're starting to move away from this that we've been trying for the last couple of years. And this classic basketball doesn't lend to selfish. And I think people kind of took that buzzword and ran with it. But
yeah, I think that's fair. And also I feel like if you're, Nick Nurse had kind of like a read and react style, and maybe we just didn't really have the pieces for like, we're not like the sort of like joy of basketball warriors where everybody's shooting, everybody's setting screens. It's kind of clunky out there. So it just like devolved into ISOs and mismatch hunting and stuff. And yeah, I think that maybe like sort of a compliment your point. I think that's sort of like maybe where the selfishness, where the identification of like this was selfish basketball, more so than like this X player is selfish and X player is not selfish. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else to add, Vivek, before we move on?
I think just as an overarching point, I think coming into media day, everyone's kind of preparing in their own way in terms of what questions to ask and what aspects of the team most interest them. And so I think I would say that selfish was more a buzzword among the media, and because it's something that Masai said that he observed at the end of last season, that is something that the media came in with, hey, what is going to be different next season? This is something you said you observed. And then it kind of just caught on in the quotes that we're then receiving,
Right.
as opposed to them just kind of bringing it up themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So like, is it fair to say that kind of like this narrative that, the media is sort of like selfish? Got it. I'll be back in a little bit. Okay. So anyways, you're talking about selfish. And then he was like, I
Yeah.
was a little bit. I said a bunch of things, but
Yeah.
right.
But I mean,
that
yeah,
makes
everybody
sense,
just it's a lot of like one question inspires the other one, inspires the other one. And so a lot of people are just kind of coming up with this stuff on the fly as much as you prepare. But once that and a buzzword like that, as soon as that goes up, these people are like, you're going to be like, okay, but especially when he's being very vague too, you're gonna be like, okay, but let's try and clarify on this selfish thing. And then it just comes back again and again. And then because he was the first one, every person after that, it just ends up being, first thing, 20 minutes ago, we were talking to Messiah about selfishness, and then you keep going.
Yeah, like some media member just like stands up with like the definition of selfish, reads it out loud, like, do you agree?
Yeah. And then there's me over here, like, so the WNBA.
Hey, I love you, James Wade.
We need it though.
We need the we need the and James Wade's a big personality, man. I hope he gets on the mic. Like,
oh man.
Yeah, we all saw this sort of like, this is my house energy, and yeah, it's fun covering the W and then seeing him come over, because like, a lot of people aren't familiar with James, I'm sure, but he's gonna be someone that like the moment he is on camera, people are gonna be like, this guy's got a lot going on, like he's cool.
Oh yeah.
But this is great. Sorry I ran a bit long, guys, but yeah, it's a fun pod. Maddie, I'll get you to come back in, and let's go to you first, Chelsea. You got a lot of things going on. What do you want to plug?
Yeah, check us out on Raptors HQ on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my personal Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, at Chelsea Leite. Post a lot of other stuff that I do, WNBA stuff, comedy shows if you're in Toronto, all that fun stuff.
Sweet. Thanks, Chelsea. Vivek, what's up? What do you got going on?
I'll be doing Raptors stuff at raptors.com. I'll be doing general NBA stuff at Sportsnet. You can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob. If you are into cricket at all, I will be doing a lot with my own blog called Play in the V. The World Cup begins on Thursday and will be running for about a month and a half. So I will be up at about 4:30 a.m. and, going all the way until, the Raptors games end.
That's dedication, and I love it. Yeah, check that out. I've been meaning to watch some cricket because there's some big sort of cricket games that go down near where I live. So,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
Not the same thing as following your blog, but that was my cricket jumping. Matt, what do you want to let people know about the pod? Raptors Republic, of course. Give us the goods.
Well, I guess this wraps up our off-season episodes, and we're going to start with season 11 of Confederacy of Dunks in 2 weeks. Then we will be back to a weekly schedule. So head over to raptorsrepublic.com, head over to your favorite podcatcher, and subscribe to the Rapcast. If you watch the segments we put up on YouTube, please like and subscribe there, and you can listen to the full thing over on the podcatchers, and you can rate as well there. So yeah, raptorsrepublic.com. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We're excited to start the new season, and thanks for listening through the summer.
Hell yeah. Let me just echo that. We're headed into our, I guess, like second and a half season with Raptors Republic. So yeah, make sure you subscribe there, support everyone, all the work they're doing. Listen to all the pods, and that's a good time. So thank you everyone for supporting. And Maddie, if you feel like we're done, we're good to go, please just give me those words I love so much. Okay.
Listen to full episodes of the Confederacy of Dunks only on the Rapcast.